Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Part 240 based on novel. So let's start. No one expected this explosion at all. This was because they couldn't sense any soul power undulations coming from outside earlier. Given this, none of them were prepared. Furthermore, all of them were also affected by the extreme chill. They weren't able to unleash their soul power to the greatest of their abilities. When this huge explosion occurred, the weakest 4 soul engineer teams, who were also closest to the layer of ice, were instantly torn to pieces. 40 soul engineers were blown apart just like that. Chen, who was about to rush out, was also flung back by the terrifying explosive force. Suddenly, chaos ensued. They unleashed their defense to their maximum capabilities. Blinding golden light shone, and Yuan shot out a beam of golden light from his chest. This beam of golden light turned into a barrier that attempted to resist the falling snowflakes. He quickly rushed to Chen's side. Both of them joined forces to lift a protective soul barrier and rushed forward. The explosion came too quickly, and it was terrifying. However, it also disappeared very quickly. After the explosive force vanished, they found that 3 more out of the 30+ soul engineer small teams had their protective soul barriers crushed, as they weren't strong enough. Although they weren't directly blown apart, they all froze into ice statues due to the extremely low temperature. The more frightening thing was that they blew apart just after they turned into ice statues, and the remnants of their corpses scattered across the ground. It was a complete mess. 70 soul engineers had turned into dust just like that. The protective soul barriers of a few small teams were also blown apart. However, they tried their best to summon their soul power and managed to seal their barriers amidst the chaos. This was the reason why they managed to avert disaster. As they rushed out from the ice and snow, the 2 Class 9 soul engineers unleashed their strongest attacks at the same time. They swept in all directions. Soul rays and cannons fired everywhere. At this moment, the 2 Beast Lord-ranked Soul Engineer Legion still demonstrated their quality even though they had suffered heavy losses. Every small team chose to rise into the sky at the first instant. In addition, they stuck very close to one another too. Yuan, Chen, and the 4 Vice Legion commanders were the last to fly up. They showed why they were the commanders, as they watched the retreat of their troops. Just like Chen had predicted earlier, the chill in the air gradually disappeared after they rose 500 meters into the air. Everything reverted to normal. However, most of the soul engineers were also pale from being frozen. 70 out of the 300 soul engineers had been lost. There were 2 soul engineer legions at the start, but now there was only 1 left. Chen looked very grim. He was completely pale. The reason was very simple. Among the 7 small teams that had been wiped out earlier, 6 of them had belonged to his Evil Eye Tyrant Soul Engineer Legion. The Evil Eye Tyrant Soul Engineer Legion was the most adept at speed. However, there was still a gap between the Evil Eye Tyrant Soul Engineer Legion and the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion in terms of absolute ability. As a result, the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion fully demonstrated their advantage in terms of overall abilities right now. They sustained considerably fewer losses. Yuan scanned the area and found out what the problem was. He tapped Xuanzhen's shoulder. "Old Xie, don't panic. When we return, we'll give you more men from the reserve regiment. We have to use our linked defensive formation. We must not let our enemies take advantage of us again." This explosion came too abruptly, leaving them at a loss as to what to do. Chen and Yuan thought that they were already being very cautious. However, who knew that they were still tricked? Even up until now, they didn't know where that explosion, which was as strong as a Class 8 stationary soul cannon shell, came from, and how those blocks of ice were blown apart. They reactivated their linked defensive formation. For safety's sake, the soul engineers from the 2 soul engineer legions unleashed this formation together. The light that came from their protective soul barrier was also extremely pure. "Come on, let's fly further first before speaking." For someone to have created that situation earlier, it must be some kind of domain-type ability. Such an ability is also very draining. Although we can't find those scoundrels, I believe it won't be easy for them to pursue us. Let's leave this place first. The Soul Engineer legions quickly flew toward the west. It was very draining for 2 Soul Engineer legions to maintain a protective soul barrier and fly at the same time. They couldn't continue flying for too long. However, they couldn't be bothered about that at this point. It was paramount for them to leave this dangerous region. Chen Yuan looked much better than Chen. At least his side didn't suffer as much. Chen might have felt a little better after being comforted by Chen Yuan, but he was still very grim. The difference between the reserve troops and the official troops was still very big. A lot of time was needed to nurture a qualified member of the Evil Eye Tyrant Soul Engineer Legion. This time, he had really incurred a huge loss. Almost 2/3 of the Evil Eye Tyrant Soul Engineer Legion was gone. At this moment, an anxious voice sounded. "Commander, this comrade seems to be unable to hold on anymore." Chen Yuan turned his head, and saw a Soul Engineer of the Imperial Soul Engineer Legion carrying another person not far behind him. The Soul Engineer that was being carried looked very pale. One of his arms and one of his legs were broken. He looked terrifyingly pale, as he had lost too much blood. Even his eyes were dim and lifeless. Chen Yuan's face contorted a little. He also turned a little gloomy. He drifted to the side of this Soul Engineer and sighed, "Comrade, have a safe journey. When we return, I'll think of a way to avenge you." As he spoke, he lifted his head and pressed it against that injured Soul Engineer's forehead. This was a rule in the army. If an injured person couldn't be saved in time, his commander could help him die, and he would die as a hero on the battlefield. Not only would he be given a grand burial after he returned, but his family would also be given a generous pension. Even his commander had to personally extend his condolences to his family. That Soul Engineer revealed a comforted look on his face. He shut his eyes and was ready to accept his imminent death. Chen Yuan didn't use too much strength. He had originally planned to retract his soul power the moment he touched this Soul Engineer's forehead. Otherwise, he might destroy the Soul Engineer's corpse if he used too much strength. He was also a comrade. Chen Yuan couldn't bear to lay his hands on him. Chen turned around. No matter who, he wouldn't be willing to see something like this. The rest of the Soul Engineers all lowered their heads. At this moment, Chen Yuan's body shook. That injured Soul Engineer silently pressed his palm on his chest. Chen Yuan had originally thought it was a subconscious action. However, an indescribable sense of crisis rose in his heart in the next moment. He didn't even need to react before his automatic protective soul barrier and invincible barrier activated. Blinding lights and intense soul power undulations alarmed everyone. It was a pity that they reacted too late. A deep blue whirlpool had silently appeared on Chen Yuan's chest. He was a Class 9 Soul Engineer, but his protective soul barrier and invincible barrier were both torn to pieces by this whirlpool. That pale white hand also pressed against Chen Yuan's chest at this point. Following this, a terrifying spiritual blast exploded out from the center of the injured Soul Engineer's body. The Soul Engineers that were closest to him were immediately blown apart. Even the Vice Legion commanders were flung far away by the frightening impact of the spiritual power. Chen was no exception. He was flung dozens of meters away. His body stiffened in mid-air. His flying-type soul tool also immediately went out. That injured Soul Engineer and the Soul Engineer who had reported earlier were instantly vaporized. After this, the linked defensive barrier distorted slightly. Two figures also disappeared completely. The linked defensive barrier only served to isolate external attacks. It couldn't defend against any attacks that came from within. The people inside could leave, but no one from the outside could enter. Only the linked defensive barrier of a soul formation could be controlled to work both externally and internally. It was only after those two figures disappeared that Chen Yuan knocked into the barrier just like the other Soul Engineers. Chen rushed over instantly and tried to pull him back. However, it was too late. Boom! Xu Qianyuan's body instantly blew apart and turned into countless pieces, scattering all around. Xie Xuanzhen's protective soul barrier was immediately activated, which protected him from harm. However, many soul engineers around him were blown up or injured. Those two people had actually escaped without leaving any traces. Bastards! Bastards! Xie Chen roared furiously. All the soul engineers from the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion were all reacting sorrowfully too. Xu Qianyuan had commanded this Soul Engineer Legion for a long time now. Now that he was dead, the impact on the entire Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion was very great. Who would have expected that a Class 9 Soul Engineer and a Prince of the Empire would die just like this? He couldn't resist his enemies at all. Every Soul Engineer let out sorrowful cries. However, they didn't even see their enemies clearly. They didn't even know how their enemies had snuck in. A few thousand meters away, Hu Yuhao slowly appeared as he held Tang Wutong's hand. Of course, only they could see each other. Those from the Sun Moon Empire couldn't see them at all. Without a doubt, those two that had attacked Xu Qianyuan earlier were Hu Yuhao and Tang Wutong. More accurately speaking, it was a perfect surprise attack and assassination. If they had attacked with all their might earlier, it was likely that very few soul engineers within the protective soul barrier would have survived. The two soul engineer legions might even have been completely wiped out. However, Hu Yuhao and Tang Wutong didn't do so. They had a more far-sighted plan. This plan was much more significant for destroying the entire Sun Moon Empire army. Hu Yuhao had controlled the snow and used his ice explosion technique. As for how he managed to force the soul engineers to rise into the sky, he had actually in fact only used a part of the strength of his snowy dance of ultimate ice. If Hu Yuhao had really wanted to wipe them out, he would have fully unleashed his snowy dance of ultimate ice as the soul engineers rose into the sky. The soul engineers were in groups of 10. Very few of them would have been able to resist such a strong attack. However, Hu Yuhao didn't do that. He only used his ice explosion technique to destroy a few small teams. At the same time, he quickly snuck in as a few of the small teams revealed flaws. He killed two of them and used his imitation and spiritual interference domain to successfully blend in. When the linked defensive barrier was fully unleashed, he had actually achieved his goal. If Hu Yuhao were an ordinary transcendent Dolor, it wouldn't be easy for him to kill a Class 9 Soul Engineer so easily. However, he already had his second soul core right now, his ultimate ice second soul core. This meant that he could directly tap into the strength of his second soul core. The deep blue whirlpool earlier had been a physical manifestation of the strength of his second soul core. His ultimate ice soul core combined with his snowless glacier. All it took was one palm strike to kill. Xu Qianyuan was killed almost instantly. Then, Hu Yuhao calmly fled with Tang Wutong. He used his spiritual blast instead of his spiritual tempest. He was already being very merciful. This was because he needed to conserve energy for them to return. They became one of the factors causing instability in the Sun Moon Empire. Of course, he left something special before he left. This left a deeper impression in the minds of these Sun Moon Empire soul engineers. The flying inside the protective soul barrier had stopped by now. The remaining soul engineers in the two soul engineer legions were only half their original number. Xie Xuanzhen's expression couldn't just be considered gloomy anymore. He was even in a bit of a daze. He had some understanding of Xu Qianyuan's abilities. As a Class 9 soul engineer, Xu Qianyuan was equipped with the best soul tools, even though he wasn't the strongest himself. He had human-shaped soul tools, automatic defensive soul tools and the treasure of the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion on him. Wait a minute, where's the treasure? Xie Chen immediately realized an important problem. His eyes brightened, and he quickly searched for it inside the barrier. Within the linked defensive barrier, Xu Qianyuan's belongings would still remain even if his body blew apart. However, Xie Chen immediately turned very grim when he couldn't find anything after searching for a long time. It's gone? The treasure of the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion is gone. This means that our enemies have taken it. This also means that those who attacked us were here for the treasure rather than to kill us. Yes? Evil soul masters pursued such objectives. At this moment, someone's heavy breathing jolted Chen awake. He subconsciously looked to his surroundings. He was stunned to find out that more than 10 soul engineers had turned completely pale. However, their eyes were blood red. Their auras were also very heavy. Not good. It's the ability of evil soul masters. They've been controlled. Kill them. Chen shouted, and made a move first. After a few more breaths, Xuanchen's furious roars echoed in the barrier. Bastards! Holy Ghost Church, I'll not let you off. In the distance, Tang Wutong sighed. Yuhao, I feel a little uncomfortable inside. Hui Yuhao hugged her slender waist. I know. However, this is war. People die in wars. In fact, even though I meddled with their bodies, they should be able to recover on their own after some time. I can only try my best not to kill using necromancy. Do you think I've become crueler? Tang Wutong gently shook her head and said, No, you're right. War is cruel. If our enemies don't die, you will be the one to die. If we kill one more soul engineer from the other party, we can save lives on our side. Hui Yuhao sighed and revealed a glow on his face. He coldly said, Juzi was right. I was too soft in the past. This is war. If we want to control and change it, we need to change these habits. However, fret not. I'll try to stay true to my heart. Furthermore, I've been misunderstanding in the past. Wutong, losing to Juzi on the battlefield is actually very normal. This is because our overall abilities are some way off from the Sun Moon Empire. That's why we've always been led by the nose by Juzi. However, this doesn't mean that we don't stand a chance. If we can't succeed overtly, we can only scheme. We can only use other ways to defeat them if we can't beat them openly. This is what I can do as an ultimate soldier. Let's go. We should return and see how things are in Doling City. I hope we can help them achieve stability and minimize any chaos. All right. Tang Wutong nodded, and they turned around and flew in the direction of Doling City. They retreated, but the remaining members of the two Soul Engineer legions were still leaving slowly. They were all filled with rage, like a soul cannon shell. They could blow apart at any time. Doling City. When Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong returned to Doling City, they were stunned to realize that smoke was not longer billowing from the city. Furthermore, the overall situation seemed to be rather stable too. The sky had turned dark by now. There wasn't anyone on the streets, but there were many soldiers patrolling. Evidently, there was a curfew in the city. Hui Yuhao secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw this. He led Tang Wutong as they silently entered the city. At the same time, he unleashed his spiritual detection to find his teammates. The area his spiritual detection could cover was simply too big under the effect of his twin soul cores. Although it wasn't enough to cover the entire city, they were still able to quickly find traces of Xuancha and the others, given their speed. Finding them was also very easy. This was because Xuancha and the others were close to the ruins of the Imperial Palace. They had been there for 10 hours. Hui Yuhao directly communicated with Xuancha using his spiritual detection. At the same time, he brought Tang Wutong towards them. Lights flashed, and Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong silently appeared beside Xuancha, Jiang Nan Nan, Yi Gai, Nan Qiuqiu, and Ji Juichen. They weren't the only 5 here right now. There were a lot of people standing in the ruins of the Imperial Palace. Many of them were still wearing armor. When 2 people suddenly appeared, they reacted very agitatedly. Suddenly, soul power undulations surged, and many people unleashed their martial souls. Xuancha lifted his hand and said, "They are on our side. They are my juniors." Hui Yuhao was astonished to discover that Xuancha sounded very awe-inspiring. After hearing his words, the soldiers and soul masters calmed down. However, they were still shocked to see Hui Yuhao and Tang Wutong. Yes? How did these 2 get in? How did no one notice them? What kind of powers do they possess? Hui Yuhao seemed to be asking Xu Sancha something with his eyes. Xu Sancha also turned his head to look at him. When he saw Xu Sanchi's eyes, Hui Yuhao's heart sank. His eyes had turned red, and the whites of his eyes were filled with streaks of blood. It was Hui Yuhao's first time seeing such a situation. Normally, Xu Sancha was very happy-go-lucky. Among the members of Shrek's 7 monsters, he was definitely the clown. He was very strong, but he shared a good relationship with everyone else. He was even like Jiang Nanan's punching bag. But right now, Xu Sancha released a strong killing intent from his body. His entire demeanor had changed. "Little Junior, how are those soul engineers?" Xu Sancha asked. His voice also sounded very hoarse. Hui Yuhao replied, "The 2 Soul Engineer Legions were the Imperial Dragon and Evil Eye Tyrant Soul Engineer Legions. We killed half of them, including the Legion commander of the Imperial Dragon Soul Engineer Legion. The rest fled. However, they don't know that we are the ones who ambushed them. Under my guise, they should have mistaken Evil Soul Masters as the culprits." "Okay, thanks Yuhao." Xu Sancha nodded and turned his head again. Not only did his killing intent not go down, but it was even trending towards a rise. Hui Yuhao shifted laterally. He came to Jiang Nanan's side and softly asked, "4th Senior, what's wrong with 3rd Senior? What's with these soldiers too? How are things in Doling City? Has the Imperial family?" Jiang Nanan shut him up using Hao eyes. After this, she transmitted to him, "Things aren't good. The Sun Moon Empire chose a very good time to attack. It was when the Doling Empire's Imperial family was gathering. That's why almost the entire Imperial family has been killed. They were all bombed to death. Things are very chaotic in Doling City. Even I didn't know that the royal blood of the Doling Empire runs in Sanchi's body. He used some kind of token to enter the city. After that, he gradually curbed the troops and maintained order. This is the reason why the chaos has been suppressed. We were all gathered here now waiting for you to return. At the same time, we are discussing our next move. The Doling Empire's Imperial family has been wiped out? Everyone is dead?" Although he had figured out this was the likely result earlier, Hui Yuhao still couldn't help but turn grim when he heard it. The Sun Moon Empire is really too vicious. Zhu Zi is too vicious. Right now, he was a little regretful that he hadn't killed everyone from the 2 Soul Engineer Legions to avenge the Doling Empire. However, Hui Yuhao was also shocked that Xu Sancha was actually of royal blood. None of them were aware of it earlier. They really only found out by chance. It was more useful for Xu Sancha to exploit his royal identity rather than his identity as a student of Shrek Academy. No wonder he was able to maintain order in Doling City within such a short period of time. However, this was still not enough. The Doling Empire needed a backbone right now. "Your Highness, the Imperial family is bare now. We need your leadership." An old general who was about 60 years old took a few steps forward before he knelt on one knee. Xu Sanchi's expression changed unpredictably as he looked at him. Not far away, another elder who was roughly the same age and who was wearing an official uniform said, "No. We still need to consider his identity. How can we make a decision so hastily?" The old general was furious. "Screw your nonsense. I've tolerated you for so long. If not for your hesitance, we would have come together to chase after those bastards. If you dare to spout further nonsense, I'll kill you right now. Commander Li, now is not the time to act rashly. Anything regarding the Imperial family is of paramount importance." That elder laughed bitterly. The general who was addressed as Commander Li said, "We've already seen what His Highness has done ever since he came. If not for the fact that he came in time to maintain order in the city would have been in great chaos. It wouldn't have hung on until now. Right now, the elites from the Empire have gone to Shrek as reinforcements. If there's internal chaos within Doling City, the Sun Moon Empire will surely exploit the situation. His Highness has already proven with actions that his identity is real. He's likely to be the sole survivor of the Imperial family. If we don't protect him, Who else do we protect? That elder in the official uniform was the chief of all the officials in the Doling Empire, and the current premier. He appeared very grim, and he was also very hesitant. If the empire was without a leader, there would certainly be big problems. At such a time, the Doling Empire would crack if such a problem appeared. It might even break apart. However, how could the throne of an empire be passed on so easily? What if this person was a spy from the Sun-Moon Empire? Even though he had a token with him, surely the Sun-Moon Empire was capable of smuggling or stealing it through improper means if they wanted to, right? This was why this premier was very hesitant. He didn't dare to agree to the suggestion. At this moment, Shu Sancha opened his mouth. He hoarsely said, "I'm not coveting the throne. However, the Doling Empire has been subjected to such a great blow. Even if we want to find the other members of the imperial family, we'll still need time. That's why I need to temporarily assume control of the throne. Premier, I understand your concerns. Let me tell you about my background." When he said this, all the officials that were present were immediately drawn to him. A man had to be capable of doing things. At such a moment, Shu Sancha stepped up not because he wanted authority, but because he wanted to save the Doling Empire. "My surname is Shu, and my full name is Shu Sancha. Honestly, I'm not proud to claim to be a member of the Doling Empire's imperial family. This is because my parents' marriage wasn't met with blessings from the imperial family, which caused them to elope." When he said this, a few of the older officials revealed pensive looks on their faces. This story appeared to be very familiar. Shu Sancha continued speaking, "Yes, my mother was called Shui Ying. The emperor of the Doling Empire was my biological uncle. My father is the master of the mysterious underworld family. I'm sure everyone can recall this. I was still a kid when I last came to the Doling Empire." The premier revealed an enlightened look on his face. "So you are actually the son of Princess Shui Ying? The token that you have belongs to her too." Shu Sancha nodded silently. The premier said, "If that's the case, we can recognize you. Since you inherited the token from Her Highness, that also means that you are at least a prince. Right now, you are the only remaining member of the imperial family. We can accept you as a prince. However, you have to prove that your mother was Princess Shui Ying." Shu Sancha calmly said, "I inherited my father's martial soul, which doesn't belong to the imperial family. However, I believe that the martial soul of our mysterious underworld family is still quite reputable in the continent. Everyone, please watch carefully." As he spoke, Shu Sancha lifted his hand. A pitch-black shield silently appeared in front of everyone. A dim golden glow soon spread from this shield. Very soon, the surface of the shield turned golden. A small snake was slowly slithering on this turtle-shaped shield. Xuanwu shield. Yes, Shu Sanchi's shield of the Xuanwu turtle had long devolved into the Xuanwu shield. Commander Li was perplexed as he asked, "Oh? Isn't this the shield of the Xuanwu turtle? It's supposed to be black." Shu Sancha nodded and replied, "Yes, mine is no longer a pure shield of the Xuanwu turtle. The martial soul of my family possesses a certain blood lineage of a Xuanwu. I was lucky to have stimulated this blood lineage during my cultivation, causing my shield of the Xuanwu turtle to evolve into the Xuanwu shield." As he spoke, his soul rings slowly rose from his feet. When everyone saw 8 soul rings around his body, they were shocked. The entire place also descended into silence. Most of the officials who knew Princess Shui Ying could roughly gauge how old he was. He's only 20+ years of age. He can't even be 30 yet. Does he actually have 8 rings at this age? What does this mean? It means he's an absolute genius. The shield of the Xuanwu turtle was already one of the strongest defensive-type martial souls. What about the Xuanwu shield? It was even more legendary. Who would have expected Shu Sancha to possess such a legendary martial soul? He even had 8 rings. It was really unbelievable. The premier was the most composed right now. He subconsciously asked, "Your Highness, how did your martial soul mutate?" According to my knowledge, even the current master of the mysterious underworld family didn't experience success with a mutation of his martial soul. I've not heard of anyone in the past few generations of the mysterious underworld family who has managed to successfully evolve his martial soul into a Xuanwu shield. Although he was putting out his doubts, it was evident from his greeting that he had in fact recognized Xu Sanqi's identity. Xu Sanqi nodded. He naturally knew that he would be posed this question. Everyone, I have another identity. I'm actually from Shrek Academy. As he spoke, he retrieved a badge that only belonged to inner courtyard students in Shrek Academy and wore it in front of his chest. Regarding this, you can send someone to verify it with Shrek. As my teammates and I twice represented the Academy in the Continental Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Dueling Tournament and emerged as champions, we were given the title of Shrek 7 Monsters for defending the glory of the Academy. All of you should also know that we have another genius in the Academy. He's also one of the members of Shrek 7 Monsters. He came up with a very special ability known as spirits. He used spirits to alleviate the need for soul masters to kill soul beasts, as soul masters can still obtain abilities that are similar to soul rings from spirits. They are even stronger than soul rings. I'm also one of the beneficiaries of his invention. Currently, I have 100,000-year spirit, a golden tortoise. Yes, it was 100,000-year spirit. In fact, everyone saw that his 8th soul ring was blood red. This was why they were so astonished. However, they were all stirred when Xu Sanqi unleashed his golden tortoise. Of course, the senior officials of the Doling Empire knew about spirits. Those who could obtain spirits were among the minority. There were even fewer people who could obtain such a powerful spirit. Spirits had created a huge uproar in the world of soul masters. The Doling Empire had even constructed its own spirit pagoda, and started to dig deeper into the mysteries of spirits. Right now, Xu Sanqi had unleashed his spirit, which was extremely strong. How could everyone not be moved? However, they were even more astonished after this. Earlier, Shrek Academy was threatened by the Sun Moon Empire's army. That's why we asked the Doling and Star Luo empires for help. However, the Academy discovered that this might be a ploy. The Sun Moon Empire took this opportunity to lay its hands on the Doling Empire. That's why we were sent over. Even though there's only 7 of us here, I believe the tragedy might not have happened if we were here earlier. This is because there's someone else here too. He's currently the 2nd strongest soul master in Shrek Academy, only inferior to the master of the Sea God's Pavilion, Elder Chen, who's an ultimate Dolor. This person is also the future master of the Sea God's Pavilion and the founder of the Spirit Pagoda, Hui Yu Hao. This video will end here.